All right.
We're ready.
Good.
All right, this is an interview with Frederick Capobianco in the Hampton Inn, Tarrytown, New York, February 4th, 2003, approximately 1 p.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Frederick J, middle initial J is in John, Capobianco. Capobianco. Date of birth, June 5th, 1922. I'm 80 years of age. I was born in Yonkers, New York.
Okay. What was your education prior to entering the military service?
High school and some college. I got a scholarship to New York University, and I wasn't able to, continue with it. But I didn't enlist. I was drafted. So
You were drafted. Okay.
I was the first 20-year-old draft.
How about telling us where you were when you first heard about Pearl Harbor, and what was your reaction to that?
Well, I was keeping company with a young lady who ultimately became my wife, and I was at their home. It was a Sunday, as I recall, for lunch, or we used to call it a dinner. Italian families eat late, and I heard over the radio that day. My reaction immediately was I was stunned, because we thought everything was going well with the peace talks, but it was quite a shock. I didn't think about how it was going to affect me at all, because I figured I'd probably be involved, but that way wasn't my thought. I was just concerned about what happened in Pearl Harbor, the loss of life and all that stuff.
So you were drafted?
Drafted, November of 1942.
How did you end up in the Air Force?
Well, I think I was drafted and I went to Camp Upton in Long Island. It was November of 1942. And they gave me a battery of tests, and I guess I scored pretty well. I had no background with communications or gunnery or any of that sort, but they sent me to an aerial gunnery school in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I took up radio communications. So Sioux Falls, and graduated from the course there, and immediately after that, I was transferred to a aerial gunnery school in Laredo, Texas, right over the border, right on the border. There's a Naval right across the border. And from there, we were assigned to a crew, and I shipped out to a place in Washington called Moses Lake, Washington. It was in the desert up there. And I met my crew, pilots, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, and the enlisted men in the crew was a radio operator, waist gunner, engineer, 2 waist gunners, tail gun, the whole crew. And we trained there. And
What kind of planes did you train on?
with B-17s.
B-17s,
Yeah.
right through.
Yeah, and I was a radio operator gunner, and we did our training there. We flew all over the Northwest. And then we came east, and we flew our own plane over to England. And we had a long journey across the country. We stopped in Colorado and Illinois, Ohio, and then in Newfoundland. And there we took off for England with our plane, with our crew. And we arrived in Prestwick Air in England. And from there we were assigned to a base at Bassingbourn, England. I didn't stay there too long, and from there I came to the 351st at Polbrook, which is in the Midlands, about 60 miles northwest of London. And that's where I did my tour of duty, 30 missions.
Were you with the same unit the entire
All the way
time?
through. Our whole crew finished intact. The only one who had any injury was mine. I was the only one because my flying suit, they were electrically heated because we flew at high altitudes, 33,000 feet, and it's pretty cold. And I suffered from frostbite, so I missed the mission. So my crew, of course, there was always a mission ahead of me, and they finished ahead of me. my one mission. I had to fly the last mission with a strange crew, and I was really quite worried about that. But I made it.
Did you keep the same plane all the time?
Yep.
Was yours a painted B-17 or was it the aluminum?
It was painted, yeah. It was Triangle J was our number.
Did you ever decorate the nose or
Yeah.
name your plane?
The name of the plane was Maggie's Drawers. Yeah, we decorated it.
I don't know if I want to ask where that came from.
Well, I don't know. I really don't. I think it was the pilot that named it. He was a Southern boy.
Did you have a lady painted on it?
Yeah, yeah. Must have been Maggie, right?
I guess.
Did you ever decorate your jackets at all?
Yes, with the same thing that we had on our planes. We had the leather jackets. Yeah. It was done across the back.
Do you still have your jacket?
I gave it to my grandson. He still has it.
Really?
Yeah, he's in Seattle, Washington now. So. But he got a lot of good use out of it. Still wearing it. And
Okay. Why don't you tell us about your missions out of England and...
well, primarily we spent all our bombing over. Our bombs, our flights were over France, Germany, Poland, and that's it. Yeah. The ones over Germany were the toughest. We had tremendous losses. We'd send up 1,000 planes, and God, we lost at least 100 bombers every mission, with 10 men on them. You know, the most difficult parades was to Schweinfurt, which is in Germany. It's a ball bearing, ball bearings are very important in the scheme of things.
What made the mission so difficult to
Well, because of the
Schweinfurt?
tremendous fighter opposition we had from the Luftwaffe. Very interesting. When I first my first mission was in 1943 in December, and at that time we had very little fire escort. They used to take us across the channel and then leave us alone, and then it was very difficult because there was a lot of anti-aircraft and a lot of the Luftwaffe was in its prime at that time. Then as the missions progressed, we had a fire escort further in. In fact, they took us to Berlin on 2 occasions in March of 1944. I can remember all these things very vividly, honestly, yeah.
What kind of fighters went up with you?
The American?
Yes.
Well, they were Spitfires from the British Air Force, and the American planes were the P-47, the Thunderbolt, and the the other was a twin-engine job.
P-38.
P-38.
That's it, P-38, yeah. They had the greater range. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about some of your missions? You said you were in the first daylight
That was
raid on Berlin.
in March, yeah. It really went very smoothly. We were scared to hell when they used to take you into a briefing room and there was a big easel with a calendar, with a, slog shade that covers up where you go. Then they throw the thing up and then you see the arrow going right to Berlin. And a lot of guys were shook up because that was their first daylight raid over Berlin, The British went every night there, And their losses were tremendous. But the most vivid mission was this one which wasn't supposed to be, in New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1943. It was supposed to be, we were going to the southern part of France, in a very roundabout way to, what's the big seaport down there? I'll tell you. And we met opposition as soon as we got across the channel. And we had fighter escort, not too far, but tremendous anti-aircraft all the way through there was no let up, God, we were in the air like 12 hours, and we had to come back by a circuitous route, and we came back over the North Sea, and we lost an engine, and we were about to lose a second one. And I could, over the radio, I heard the pilot and co-pilot talking. The thought was that we would have to ditch into the North Sea, which no picnic. But by grace of God, we found England coming up over the North Sea, and we landed in this base where Jimmy Stewart was the commander.
What kind of targets were you after?
Most of the times they were munitions factories
How about
and
this
some
raid?
railroad yards.
How about this raid into southern France? What were you after there? The
There was-
seaport or?
Yeah, the shipping and stuff. Yeah, but most of them, we very seldom went after civilians like with anti-personnel bonds. We didn't have to keep, they're all manufacturing. Now this place, Schweinfurt that I mentioned, we went there numerous times. I went there twice, but most of it was on the ground. We did very little damage as it developed. They were manufacturing the ball bearings.
Now you were saying when you were coming back across the North Sea, when you lost your engine, you ended at the air base where Jimmy Stewart was colonel. Would you tell us about that?
Well, by luck, we were able to make the English coast coming over the North Sea because we had one engine going and one about to go on the other side. Well, they can operate with two engines, but if two go on the same side, it's bad news. But our pilot was effective enough and had the wherewithal to get us back. And we had it wasn't a crash landing, but it was an emergency landing. Luckily, we found the base because it was a day like this with a lot of fog. But it was late. It was almost midnight when we got there. And we left about, 10 o'clock in the morning. We were in the air an awful long time. And he came out to pick us up with his Jeep, Colonel Jimmy Stewart. And he piloted us in and he took us to the dining hall and we had our breakfast. And then we got into our plane and there was no repairs they had to make. It was all shot up with holes with anti-aircraft. And we brought it back to the base in Polbrook. And nobody was injured. Nobody. In fact, we had a very lucky crew in that respect. As I said, the only half-ass injury was my frozen toes.
Now you're wearing the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Yeah. But that's awarded for completing the missions. When I first went over there, the required missions you had to complete before you were relieved of duty was 25. When I was halfway through, they increased it to 30. So, most of us were thinking that's what we were going to get in the last 5 missions. But we made it. The whole crew made it. In fact, they all finished up mission academies, I told you. And so if you completed your tour of duty, you got the DFC plus the Air Medal with 3 clusters, which is what I got. And the DFC paid me a total of $2 every month extra over the regular GI. So that was an ample reward, I guess. But I think about it, because I see movies and of the air raids from England, and I don't know how the devil we lived through it, really. It was terrible. And the losses were horrendous, a lot of them. And we were all young kids in our 20s. That's all it was,
Did you ever...
And I was drafted into this thing, too, Nobody asked me if I wanted to fly. I remember my first flight was in an AT training where the pilot was in the front, and I was in the back with a machine gun. We were shooting at a target. I went to my first time in a plane. I was never in a plane before. So you learn things, so.
Did you also serve as a gunner? You said you were trained as a gunner.
Yeah, because I had a gun in my position. I was right beyond the bomb bay in the B-17, and there was a little radio room there, and my gun was right there, right above, that I operated from.
So you were the turret, top turret kind of.
Yeah.
Did you ever fire at German aircraft at all?
Sure, yeah. We had some hits from, our gun wasn't me, but our waist gunners were they were sharp, and we had a tail gunner who was very good. He got a couple of kills. The German Air Force was, they were real good opponents. They used to come at us frontal, at the whole formation. and they were very expert at weaving in and out. But they lost a lot too. In the end, they had to curtail their opposition because they were running out of fuel, you know. That's when things started to get easy. But we had a tough time. I finished up in May of 1944. And I was leaving England on D-Day. That's when everybody was up in the air. They put every available plane in the air that day. And I was on my way out of England to Northern Ireland. And they kept me there for about 3 months training new crews. And I had a wonderful time because they were getting steak and eggs for breakfast and stuff. The Irish were great. And it was nice. Irish countryside, all green, you know. Rained every morning, but that's why everything was green there. Had a good time then. So that was my...
Have you been in contact with the fellows who...
Well, I've tried. A lot of them, a couple have died. I see one regularly. He lives in New Jersey. He was a tail gunner. George Middle, his name is. And there was one up in New Haven, Connecticut, Frank Matola. I haven't heard from him in years, and I don't know what's happened. He was pretty sick when he left, you know. He was going on a disability too.
Do you belong to the 8th Air Force Association?
Yeah, I belong to the Distinguished Flying Cross Society, the 8th Air Force Historical Society, and this 351st Bomb Group alumni.
You were saying there was a story.
Yeah, about that mission, written up by another crew. And they go through the whole deal here, and it brought back very, very, very good memories of. See, the mission of the 31st of December, 1943, and it starts on this page too. But I get this every month, or you know, we pay dues, and they have reunions which I haven't attended. Every year in the States, this group.
Do you have any other pictures there that you wanted to show us? Or?
Well, let's see. I don't know if I have pictures. Well, this was my...
Your ID card?
Yeah, this was in... what the hell was it? I think this was down in Laredo.
If you hold that up in front of you, I can zoom in on it. Now, how old were you in that picture there?
Well, it was, let's see, June 12th. What was 43. I was born in 22, so I was 21.
Oh, okay. Hold that up just a second longer. Get that. Okay, got it.
I got some other pictures. They were from newspaper clippings, you know, the press. Because my job prior to going into the service, I worked for the newspaper chain in Westchester County. I was a circulation manager for these, you know, I used to handle kids. Of course, I was young. I was only 18 years of age. And these young kids are delivered. We used to, you know, train them and replace them when they left and stuff. I think I left them all home.
Well, you gave us, you sent us some...
A write-up or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know whether I kept a copy of that. But that's a couple of years back. You know, I have pictures here taken in England with, you know, the crew together and stuff. In fact, I had one in my office, the whole crew. I could have brought that up, but I wasn't thinking.
Okay. Did you ever use the GI Bill after you returned?
No.
No. How about the 5220 Club?
Yep.
Did you use that?
I was very foolish. Because what happened was when I got returned to the States after my missions, they gave me a 30-day leave. It was for rest and rehabilitation. Because I was on my way to the Pacific Theater to fly B-29s. That was all outlined. And then they dropped the bomb. But, and I got married then. And so when I got discharged, my wife was expecting, and the child was born in, it was about a month after I was discharged. And I had to go to work, you know. But I could have gone to school at night and stuff, but I didn't do it. And I was a good student. I really blew it. Because I didn't have the direction either, you know. I came from a family of 10. And they always had problems, you know, with money and stuff. We were depression kids, you know. So it wasn't easy. But you guess you read, what's his name, Brokaw's book, right? The
Greatest
Greatest Generation. Yeah, I found that very interesting.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
That's
very
my story.
Okay, thank
It's
you
a
very
great
much.
story.
What I'd like to be able to do is, could I copy that
Sure.
on the copy machine downstairs? I'd
Sure.
like to copy that article, and
Yeah, it starts
we'll
here.
put it in your folder.
Good. Yeah.